Hello, welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am one of your hosts, Derek, and I have got my co-host and buddy Ryan with me.
Hello.
Hello. And we are here to talk to you about the 2013 Nicolas Cage film, The Croods.
Is it fair to call it a Nicolas Cage film? I mean, he's in it,
He's the lead.
I guess,
He's
but it's
he's the
not
top
about him.
he's
He's not the
top
main
billing.
character.
He is not the main character. He's the top billing. It co-stars Ryan Reynolds and Emma Stone primarily. Emma Stone, I would argue she's the lead of this movie, but we can get into that. The Croods, quote, after their cave is destroyed, a caveman family must trek through an unfamiliar, fantastical world with the help of an inventive boy.
Yeah, that about covers it.
That is the movie. Yeah. So what we do here on the show is we watch Nicolas Cage films. Any movie that Nicolas Cage is in for any amount of time, we will discuss on this show. And this happened to be what came up for this episode. So Ryan painstakingly writes notes as he watches the movie. And then we go through those notes and talk about that movie.
That's right. And this movie was so boring that I struggled to come up with anything interesting to write notes about. So it's mostly just things that are happening in the movie, whether they're interesting or not. I just was like, well, I don't have a note about this part yet, so I guess I'll write this down.
Okay.
So yeah, you'll have that to look forward to. So my first note is animation within animation, because this is an animated movie, if you didn't know. But the intro to the movie, and I'll also say this, I don't remember. I watched this movie like 3 days ago, and I've already forgotten basically everything about it. So I'm just going to be trying to wing it with these notes and hope I remember some of the stuff. That's how forgettable this movie was.
Okay.
But yeah, animation within animation. So they have like a flashback scene. It's like like an exposition scene where it's like all animated at the beginning, but it's a different style of animation than the actual animation for the movie.
Right. It's more like a hand-drawn versus a CG.
Right. And it's a weird, I don't know. I always think that's weird.
You don't like when movies do that? It takes you out of
it?
it?
I think it depends on the movie, but this one, I didn't really, it was fine, I guess. That's basically my entire feeling about the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, So for those who don't know, it just kind of paints the background picture of what these caveman people are like. It's weird that we keep calling them cavemen when they're like, it's not just men. There's also several women characters or female characters.
Cave people.
Cave people. I don't know. I'm not cave because like she's a caveman. Emma Stone plays a caveman girl. That sounds weird to say.
Cave girl.
Just cave girl, right?
I guess.
I don't know. But yeah, it has the hand-drawn intro before we see the gorgeous CGI faces that we will see for the next hour and a half.
So we get our first introduction to Nick Cage's character named Grug. After the hand-drawn intro. And basically 90% of this movie for him is just screaming, yelling, or grunting. Which you could make an argument that that's a lot of what most of his movies are. But the difference is that in this movie, you can't see his face. And so I think that takes away a lot of the enjoyment I would normally get from his screaming and grunting.
Well, this character Grug was specifically designed for Nicolas Cage because apparently Nicolas Cage was offered the role of Shrek and he turned it down because he didn't like the character design. So this time DreamWorks was like, we're going to get Nick. We're getting him. So we're going to design this character so that he's happy with it.
Okay, so this is a note a little later on for me, but we might as well just get into it now. Early on in the movie, like when we first start hearing Nick Cage's voice come from this character, I couldn't cross that threshold. This was not believable as Nick Cage's voice coming out of this character for me.
To be fair, I actually felt that way about all the characters.
I didn't have that problem with you. I think okay, so we, as Derek explained, review Nick Cage movies on this podcast. That's basically everything we do. Talk about Nick Cage movies, how much we love him, and his acting range. But I think one of the big mistakes of this movie is that they didn't really, they do something with sometimes with animated movies where they use like motion capture on the actor's face to try and capture some of the, expressions. They do it in video games too to capture the expressions of the actor. And it didn't seem like they did that in this movie at all. And I think that that made his character stand out the most to me
Mm.
as not believable at all in this role, because you hear his voice and you expect certain things because he's so expressive, and you just didn't get any of that. The character's just like stone faced almost the whole time, and I think they lost a lot with that.
I think that's fair. I do think it extends to some of the other characters as well. I think it's just a problem across the board because, like, you know, Eep is the daughter, Grug's daughter, Eep. She's the main character, voiced by Emma Stone, right? And she meets and kind of has a crush on Guy, played by Ryan Reynolds. So Ryan Reynolds has now played two different characters just named Guy, which is weird. That's a weird niche to be in. But I just never felt like the voices matched these characters at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's maybe has to do with preconceived notions about what a person that looks like this would sound like. You expect like the big, kind of lumbering characters to have like a deep, not menacing necessarily, but a deep like baritone kind of voice. And none of them really have that, especially not Nick Cage.
Yeah, Cloris Leachman, so she voices the grandmother, and I thought she was fine. She fit for me, like voice wise, that worked. I didn't
Sure.
really have a problem with that. But even like Catherine Keener, she plays the wife, like that, it just felt off. Everything just felt like they were cast in a in a different movie. Like they changed all the characters afterwards or something. I don't know. It just was weird. There's a disconnect the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have that issue with anybody except Nick Cage. So, unfortunately, I can't agree with you wholly on that. But so my next note is lots of slapstick. I could tell immediately that this movie. Okay, so I don't have kids, right? I'm a happily kid-free person. Derek, however, has a wonderful daughter. And
Oh.
so he watched this, I'm assuming, with his daughter, attempted to. And I watched this with my girlfriend, whom I love very much, but is not a child, thank God. Um, I, that went a weird direction, but that's not how I intended it. Anyway, uh, this movie, it was intended for kids, not intended for me. I am not the target audience for this. Derek's daughter is, so maybe he'll be able to give some insight with how his daughter felt about this movie. But um, basically, it was just like a bunch of cavemen like getting hurt and like slapping each other and getting smashed by rocks and things like that. That was basically all the humor of this movie was supposed to be that.
Yeah, it feels like, I think this is the best kind of thing. It feels like a Will Ferrell comedy, but as a cartoon. Just
It
lots of
kind of
like,
feels like Looney Tunes, but like not enjoyable.
nah, yeah, it's not like, I think Looney Tunes is a little more
Clever.
witty.
Yeah.
They're a little bit sharper. There's a wittiness to Looney Tunes that's not here. This was a lot of like, for example, I know we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but to talk on that specifically, there's a scene where there's these sharp rocks that they don't want to walk on, right? And Grug steps on one before he knows what it is, and it hurts, and he tells everybody that it hurts, and immediately like everybody goes to walk on these rocks, and everybody gets hurt, and it's just like kind of it's just dumb, like because these characters are being portrayed as unintelligent, but also like kind of normal at the same time. And so depending on what they think is funny is the level of intelligence a character will have in that moment.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Or even like
and a good example of this is what I was about to go to next is the egg football scene.
yeah.
You get basically they close up their cave at night because
Mhm.
of the animals that come out at night that'll eat them apparently, and that's how they survived. And they go out during the day, and apparently to get food they have to play egg football and like go steal an egg from a bird and get it back to their cave. And it's a big slapstick fest of just, you know, people throwing the egg and catching the egg and running into things and the egg flying in the air and not breaking.
And
And
they
the payoff is you get to watch them like drink some egg yolk out of the egg, and
yeah.
it's
And
you
I
know
mean, they kind of have a redo of that scene later on in the movie too. And it's hard to believe that this family would have been able to survive if those are their hunting skills.
right.
Right.
That's
And
true.
I mean, Guy kind of makes a comment on that later in the movie. He's like, no, really, like, what are they doing? Because Eve's like, oh, they're hunting. Like, no, 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 really, what are they doing? Because it is like, it's it's beyond cartoonish. And I know that's maybe seems redundant to say for an animated film, but it just was so over the top. And like, there's a few moments that I chuckled. I'm not going to pretend that I never chuckled in the movie, but it's mostly just too far. And so my daughter, she's a little more than 2.5, and her favorite movies are Moana, Coco, Encanto, and The Nightmare Before Christmas. She will sit and she will watch all four of those, no problem. She did not get through this movie. We got like an hour in, and I had to have stopped it like 3 or 4 times to get to that hour point before I was like, all right, I got to finish this on my own another time because this just isn't working. She could not have been like less engaged
Yeah.
because there's just not, I just don't think there's enough interesting stuff happening. And early on in the movie, it's also just very drab, right? They're in this kind of wasteland. It's all rocks and slate and sand, and it's just not that interesting to look at. And a bunch of scenes inside a cave at night are just not that visually interesting to a child, which again, to Ryan, your point, that's the target audience. So I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
this is more for like 8-year-olds or something like that. Maybe it is PG, it's not G.
I don't
Uh,
know, with how like boy crazy the girl lead was, I feel like maybe, I don't know who it was targeted to, because I feel like there's no like you're not really interested in the opposite gender until like, or the same gender or whatever. You're not romantically interested in anybody until usually like your teens or like preteens. So
Yeah, it's hard to know, right? Like, who is this for? You know, you've got Nicolas Cage kind of being very front and center, especially as the movie goes on. You know, he's got some pretty big parts at the end where it's really like just him. But again, this is clearly a kid's movie, but it's too dumb for teenagers. But then, yeah, there's the romance that's really not for like the 6 to 8-year-olds. I'm not really sure
yeah,
who this is for, but like this movie was successful. It was financially successful. It got a video game. It did get a sequel a couple of years ago. There's even a series, a streaming series that came after the sequel. So like people like it,
we're just weird, I guess.
I guess.
So my next note so the end of this egg football thing. We're kind of bouncing all over the place,
A little bit.
but at the end of this egg football thing, I think it's the son Thunk that
Mm-hmm.
has the egg, and the mom yells, "Hit the brakes!" And I just went, "How do cavemen know what brakes are?"
Well, that's kind of my point, right? Like sometimes they talk totally like we do, and then other times they're cave people.
Yeah, it was a weird thing, and maybe I'm thinking too much about it. It's just that's like the one glaring moment that stood out to me. There's probably others where they were referencing something that doesn't exist yet. So anyway,
I think there's a lot of that back and forth of like writing these like regular people and writing them like, you know, caricatures of cave people,
right.
right? And it just kind of is one or the other in any given scene, and it's a big kind of whiplash as you go throughout the movie because these are very opposites of each other. It's the same characters who, you know, are all of a sudden very polite and professional sounding, right? And then all of a sudden are just morons.
Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, it's a weird thing, but that's again maybe this is a movie made for kids, I think. So I'm probably reading too much into it. But
I
yeah, this is
guess.
where I realized that how bad of a tough a sell that the Nick Cage character was for me, because that was my next note. It was just like I thought maybe as the movie went on, maybe I would be able to deal with it, but
Supposedly a lot of thought went into this. They had said that specifically the body language and character concepts of Grug were specifically based on Nick Cage's performances in The Family Man and Leaving Las Vegas.
so we've seen both of those movies and
Both.
reviewed them on this podcast. Do you agree that that's what?
No.
Yeah, I got nothing from that. I would not have guessed that at all. I mean, the caginess in those movies is not a crazy. They're not like super cagey. I guess Leaving Las Vegas has some moments. They both have some moments, but really, for the most part, he's pretty normal in those movies
Yeah.
in general. Obviously, there's a few standout moments, but
Yes.
so if they're basing it off of that, then they're basically just basing it off of normal people because Nick Cage isn't that crazy for most of those movies.
Well, and most of this movie, he's really just one of two things. He's either annoyed and sarcastic, or he's like doing the crazy cave person, blah 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 blah, crazy face thing.
Yeah, noises and
Right,
yeah,
like that's all that he's doing. It's one or the other. It's at those extremes. There's the scene where he brings out the shell and they all just destroy this seashell as if it's like a weapon of mass destruction. And then later they're being shot across the canyon on on fire corn cob, and they're like, "Oh hey guy, where are the Croods?" Like everything's fine. Yeah, it's just this whiplash back and forth of the extremes that makes it really difficult to sink into.
yeah. So after we're basically at this point, the story is that the girl Eep is feeling caved up, basically like locked in this cave. Yeah, she's like in this cave all the time, and she wants to leave and she wants to explore. Right? There's been a lot of stories like this before. It's not an original idea, but one night after this egg thing, she sees some fire. She wakes up in the middle of the night and sees like lights. She doesn't know what fire is, obviously, because she's a cave person, but she sees some lights outside coming through the cracks in the rock that block her from getting out. And so she moves the rock, which I didn't get because the whole point of that rock was that it was big enough that Grug could move it, but that no one else was really, because his whole thing was being strong.
Right.
So he was the one that closed with the rock, but then she was able to move the rock. So whatever. But then she goes and chases down this source of light,
mm-hmm.
and it ends up being Ryan Reynolds' character Guy, who has fire, and she's amazed by this, and instantly in love with him, which is bothersome, or at least for me, distractingly bothersome throughout the movie. How like much she wanted to touch him and like be all over him all the time. Did you get those vibes at all? It was like just constant.
Well, I also like part of that what played into the awkwardness is I don't know how old these characters are supposed to be. Like, are Guy and Eve teenagers? Are they young adults? Are they like 12? I don't really have like any sense of how
Well, they
old
have the voice of adults,
they have
and
they do, but so
yeah,
does Thunk, and Thunk says that he's 9 at one
that's
point
true.
in the movie. He's voiced by an adult. So like, I don't know how old they're supposed to be. Which makes
And that makes it a little more awkward too. Yeah.
yeah. And you have, Eep is being portrayed as this, intelligent, capable, strong person who feels, trapped, by her dad's kind of overbearing, protective mentalities.
And the
But
first time she sees another boy, she's instantly in love with him.
yeah.
Or sees a boy, she's instantly in love. Another boy other than her brother or dad.
Well, and it certainly comes off like they don't see other cave people
Yeah.
ever. And yeah, and there's some confusing stuff in here too, where like Guy calls them cavies. Like he's not a cave person. He's a different type of,
Well, I think he's supposed to be like the next, how
is
they
he a
say we
Homo sapien?
evolved.
Is that and they're
Yeah, I think
Neanderthals?
he's like one step in the evolution cycle beyond them. That's why he has fire.
I guess so. Like, but so okay. So
Or it's because they live in a cave.
Right.
Could also be that.
It could be that, but
then that would mean that like that he's run into other people that just live in caves before, and that's like a common occurrence because he has a term for them.
Right, he has a term for them, which means he's come across them. But it certainly comes off like Eep and her family never come across other people, which of course then begs the question of like, how do any of them get together? Because they made some comment about how Gran was like traded to the person who ends up being her husband by her
Well, they
dad or
say
whatever.
in that animated thing, they do say there were other families around, but that they got slowly killed off because they didn't follow the rules, or they went missing. They didn't say killed off
Right.
because it's a kids movie, but that's
Okay.
why her dad. That's why they've survived, because her dad follows the rules.
So they're the last of the Neanderthals.
I guess
That's
that's what
the
they're
idea.
implying. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's
So
not
then
really
we
okay.
also meet in this scene my favorite character, the only character that I liked in this movie,
The sloth.
the pink sloth.
I knew it.
And now that you've said that this movie was successful and that there's been a sequel and some other stuff, I feel like that sloth is 100% a bigger character in the sequel. There's no way that would be the only character that I can see kids liking.
I mean, I think that that's a fair
It's like Baby
assumption.
Yoda, right? Like,
Yeah.
when Mandalorian came out, they couldn't get toys of it out fast enough.
I mean, the only thing I knew about this movie going into it was the sloth dun 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 from like the commercials. I
Oh, okay.
remember that. That's the only thing I knew about this movie.
I didn't remember that.
I didn't know that I remembered it until I was watching it, and then that scene happened, and I was like brought back, 11 or 10 years ago
Yeah.
to those commercials. So, I guess
Yeah.
this is the 10th anniversary of the Croods. No.
Hey, there we go. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more views on this video because of that.
Oh yeah, let's play it up.
So basically, Guy tells Eep that the world is ending, or something along those lines. Something catastrophic is happening.
He says the
and
world
that,
is ending. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if he used those words, but he basically that the Earth starts shaking, and then like it opens up and everybody dies or something like that. I think it's implying that the earthquakes and magma is killing everybody.
Right.
And so then, of course, that night there's an earthquake. Or wait, is it the next night or like within a day?
No, it's that night because she says that she can't leave her family. So he gives her the shell and says, call if you need. He leaves. She comes back. Well, she's about to come back when her dad finds her because he realizes that she's missing, right? And by the time they get back, it's morning. So the sun is up at that point.
And then it happens and they all have to leave the cave and they go into this land that is not real.
Not even close. Yeah.
It's a little weird. I wasn't sure what they were like. I know there was some weird animals back in, prehistoric times, or like, I guess I don't think Neanderthal times is like prehistoric, but maybe it is. I don't know where that line is, but where the times
there were mammoths. We had mammoths at that time.
Well, there were giant sloths existed. There was a lot of weird animals, but I don't think there were rainbow saber-toothed tigers. Maybe there were.
You didn't have one of those as a kid?
Or like land whales that had legs.
Yes. That was in the original version of Moby Dick, but they didn't think it was as accessible.
Believable. Yeah. Yeah, there's literally a whale. Like they climb up their mountain or whatever that their cave is in, and they go through some journey and end up in the land that time forgot, essentially. And it's just like it's like the Dark Crystal. You have all these random creatures that don't really exist that just like flopping around in the background. And
my problem is like the land that time forgot or Land of the Lost or any of those types of movies, there's like some giant sinkhole and you fall deep into the the hollow earth and all that type of stuff. This doesn't have that. They're literally on the other side of a wall. Like there was a mountain wall that collapsed.
that's all that separated them, basically.
Right? Like it's like the Rocky Mountains. If California, like they go, like California is where all these animals are, essentially.
Right.
Which then, like, I got so confused. What was supposed to be happening? Was this continental like tectonic shifting, or like was this the breaking up of Pangea? I don't understand. But then they end up in a place that doesn't exist. So I feel like that's the wrong place to be, since it's not. If the idea is supposed to be that it's not around anymore, and that's then like they're clearly in the wrong spot because none of that survives.
Right. Yeah, it's just a weird thing. And I mean, they get attacked by a big group of carnivorous birds,
Yeah, a swarm.
Which isn't, it's not really, that weird, but I mean, there are carnivorous birds obviously that exist now,
Sure.
and in prehistoric times there was the terror bird, which I'm thinking these were supposed to be, but those things were like 10 feet tall. They were huge,
Yeah.
and these are not huge. It's like they are like football size. They look like, and they travel in packs, like huge swarms of
Hmm.
birds. So I mean, they just they took inspiration from things that existed, I think, and then just made it fit their movie to be more kid
Yeah.
friendly.
I think they just had fun with it, which is fine. Like of all the things in this movie that isn't good, I don't really care that they just made up a bunch of creatures.
Yeah, it's fine, I guess. I mean, I'm
You
not mad
know?
about it.
No,
It's just,
yeah.
I would have loved to if the rest of the movie was super cartoony, but then they had super realistic 10-foot
Right.
terror birds that literally just scrape the flesh from their bones. Like,
I don't think that would have gotten the PG rating they were hoping for.
no, but that would have really made the movie better for me. They should really take my feelings into account next time.
Clearly. You heard it here,
And then
DreamWorks. Give Ryan a call.
I don't really know what this note means. Only you can prevent forest fires. Was there a forest fire?
Yeah, so there's
Oh,
so
okay.
when okay, so Guy saves the day from the terror birds with fire again, because that seems to be his big ace in the hole. And the Croods end up with the fire, and they don't understand fire, obviously, and so they start kind of like messing with it. And Thunk gets like caught on fire. He's like, oh, it likes me. It's biting me. It's biting me. And he's running around. And then Grug makes the line of go try and hide from it in the tall, dry grass. Like he
Oh,
says,
yeah.
right. And you're like, oh God. And then, the grass obviously bursts into flames and it ends up on Gran's staff. And she's like, basically reenacting the Rafiki scene from Lion King, but she's like making fire show up everywhere every time she hits something. It becomes this huge mess. Like that's the thing, right? Like, it goes way too far on the
Yeah.
incompetent side of things. And I'm like, but you've all survived. You're the last surviving Neanderthals. You can't be that incompetent. You might not be as smart as Guy, but you're not that dumb either.
That's pretty dumb. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The,
And so, yeah, at this point, they decide to kidnap Guy. He tries to leave, and they're like,
Mhm.
oh, we're just going to kidnap you and force you to travel with us against your will while my daughter hits on you relentlessly while you're stuck in a log. So, yeah, my next note was casual kidnapping because they literally just kidnap him.
And he's fine with it. He takes it really well.
He does, yeah. And he doesn't even mind the like relentless harassment from Eep.
He must like really like her.
I mean, I don't know, man. It didn't seem like he was nearly as into her as she was into him.
But like, why does he stick around?
He's stuck in a log. He's being forced to stick
No,
around.
but like he gets out. Like remember, like there's the hunting scene where she lets him out because he's gonna teach her to hunt or whatever. He could have easily gotten away at that point. When they're in the sharp rocks, he could have easily gotten away then. Like he keeps like helping them, and I guess the idea is supposed to be like, oh, he's nice. He's this
Yeah,
caring, nice
that's
guy.
exactly what it is.
But it's just like he almost dies several times because of how incompetent the Croods are, right? Like so, okay, there's the scene where they're sleeping and Grug's got the log. He's basically spooning the log that Guy is stuck in. And then the next morning, obviously there's been another like earthquake and a huge chunk of ground is gone now. And Guy's like hanging over the edge. I'm sorry, but you're telling me that this family that has like this biggest scaredy cats in the world and freak out over, a seashell aren't going to notice at all when like the ground disappears.
Right. Yeah, it's a little weird.
Like I need some sense of like reality to ground myself to, right? Like a movie can only have so many conceits, right? At some point I need to
Yeah.
feel some way connected to this universe and say what can and cannot happen. But this movie is just like, well, just whatever in this scene is funny is what happens.
Yeah. That's yeah,
And
I agree.
that's really hard for me.
My next note is sloth gonna shank grandma. Because
That
I
was
think
fun.
the
I did
sloth
chuckle
that
at that.
one night
Yeah.
has like a knife and he's like pointing it at grandma, and that was pretty funny.
And guy's like, he will cut you. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that was funny.
That did make me laugh too. Like I said, the sloth was the only thing that made me laugh in this movie. And then caveman bird puppet is my next note.
Uh-huh. Talk
Yeah,
about Looney Tunes. That felt like a rip
very
off of
much.
some
Yeah,
Looney Tunes thing.
big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you tell us what happens in that scene, Derek? Because I don't remember.
Okay. So they're hungry, they're starving, right? And they find a bird. And it's basically the same kind of bird from earlier in the movie. Lucky for them. And they're gonna try and steal the egg. And so Grug and Thunk are gonna hunt because Eep is grounded. Because apparently Neanderthals had the concept of grounding their children. Which means you're not allowed to hunt. We need hunting to survive, but you're grounded and you're clearly the best hunter in the family. But because you're grounded, we're all going to starve to death.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a chore, not like a
Well, it's
fun
because
thing.
she wants to do it is the
Oh.
thing. Like she excels at it. And so he's grounding her from it, but they'll also die if they don't eat. So it
But
seems
the rest of them are
counterintuitive.
incompetent, so
They're
yeah.
all terrible. They're so bad. And so, yeah, so they're hunting and it's not going well. And so Guy is trying to escape, obviously, and he convinces Eep to let him out of the log, and he'll let her help him hunt because somehow she can't just go and do it herself when clearly she is like cheetah speed and incredibly strong. She still needs some guy, some person's approval to let permission to go do this. Anyway, Guy's big idea is to create basically like a marionette puppet of a bird that this other bird will want to mate with, I
Yeah.
guess. So, as look, we've made props, we're cosplayers, things like that. It takes a little bit of time and equipment to pull off a task like that, but he does it in what appears to be 5 minutes. And they have got some like slingshot rope thing set up, very Looney Tunes, very very Wile E. Coyote. This whole bit here is very Wile E. Coyote, and of course it doesn't work, and everybody gets involved when they find out, and they're all running around, and then just by sheer dumb luck, the bird steps in the trap, and they get to have their roast bird.
Yeah.
But this comes back
Okay.
later in the movie. There's a lot of these things where like a thing happens and then that thing just happens again 45 minutes later.
So just so you know, I'm looking through my next bit of notes and I don't remember like any of this. I feel like I fell asleep and I was just unconsciously
Still
writing
writing.
notes. Yeah. So you might be having to explain a lot of this. I'm sorry about that. I apparently found this movie incredibly boring.
I mean, it's not interesting
So
for the
my
most
next
part.
note is something we've already discussed. I find her boy obsession a bit creepy because at certain times it felt like if it was a reverse role and the guy was doing this to the girl, then it would be like very uncomfortable. And it was uncomfortable this way too.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable throughout because I can't tell if Guy's into her or not, but he's sticking around, so maybe he is. But like again, like I don't know how old any of them are supposed to be, if they're supposed to be the same age at all. Because if you look at the actors, right, you have Emma Stone, who Emma Stone is a year younger than me, and then you've got Ryan Reynolds, and Ryan Reynolds is, I forget how old he is, 11 years older than me. So like there's a pretty big age gap between those two actors. So I don't know. It's weird. It's strange. It's awkward. I never really like it. But yeah, it's very much portrayed like the very stereotypical schoolgirl crush mentality, right? The dad's like, "Oh, the water's it looks dangerous. I'd be careful." And she's like, "Oh, Dad, you're overreacting." The guy's like, "You should be careful." And she's like, "Okay, okay."
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
all right, like it's a little too cliche.
And my next note is more Nick Cage noises.
Yeah, he makes a lot of the because like yeah, there's the
A lot of
monkeys.
noises.
The monkey scene was a little funny the first time. I liked
I
when
don't even remember it.
they come across these small monkeys and Grug thinks he can like intimidate them. So he's like blah 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 blah, blah the whole thing, and the monkeys just start punching him, and he's getting
Oh, I
knocked
do
around
remember
like a
that.
pinball. And Thunk does go, "Okay, I figured it out, Dad. Stop running your face into their fists." And I was like, all right,
Yeah.
that was pretty funny.
And then I have Sloth Caveman Diving Board.
Yeah, that's at the water scene I was just talking about. Yeah, he puts out Grug's arm and then does a dive off of
Oh,
Grug's
okay.
arm into the water. And Grug is very like deadpan, almost fourth wall breaking.
And now he has a pet. That was my next note.
Who does?
I don't know.
I mean, that comes much, much, much later. Thunk gets a pet, and then at the very tail end, Grug does get a pet. But those are all pretty far apart from each other, so I'm not sure.
Well, that's probably where I fell asleep. I don't know. Um, and next up I have they've never seen stars. Because apparently they
Yeah.
comment at one point that they've never seen stars, which
Okay,
seems
so
weird.
you must be talking about Thunk's pet then. Yeah, Thunk gets this dog alligator, this dog-a-gator, which is cute. It's a cute scene. I like it, right? You're supposed to, because they all get separated, right? And this is where their metal is gonna be tested, right? And Thunk is by himself, and he's 9, and he's scared, and we're supposed to think it's funny that he's scared, but he is a 9-year-old in a part of the world he does not know with creatures he's never seen before. So it seems kind of mean to be making fun of this 9-year-old, but that's what the movie's doing. You want to make fun of Grug, that's fine. He's like a 40-year-old, but Thunk comes across this dog-a-gator, and you think it's gonna attack him or whatever, but it turns out it's just like this puppy that wants to play fetch, and it is a cute scene.
Yeah, and a lot of the animals in this remind me of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. They were just like they just mashed up 2 animals, except I think Avatar's was much more successful. Maybe it was because of the animation style. I don't know. A lot of like a turtle bird. What why does a bird need a turtle shell in this movie? Like there's like a doggo-gator. And what is a dog mating with an alligator, or like did they split into 2 separate species later on? I mean, I don't know.
There's
It's weird.
They're what's this? A chimera. They're all like chimeras.
Apparently.
In like mythological type ways rather than like grounded in reality ways, which is more like Avatar is a little bit more like, hey, what could it be like? Versus this is much more fantastical.
Yeah.
But yeah, they climb to the top of this tree, and he's like, I'm going to show you guys, like, I'm going to show you all something. And he shows them stars. These people live in the middle of nowhere.
Where there's no trees blocking the sky. She was literally out 2 days ago running through the night, and you're telling me she's never seen stars?
Now, I guess the idea is supposed to be that they're not supposed to leave the cave at night.
Right, so but she literally did just 2 days before that.
They didn't stop and smell the roses, Ryan.
I guess. I mean, but if I was outside and I had never seen stars and then I went outside at night and there's a bunch of blinky lights over my head, I'm going to probably notice that, I feel like.
Well, that's what separates you from the Neanderthals.
I guess. And then belt snake is my next note.
Yeah.
Somebody has a belt snake?
It is very... So, okay. The main crux of this is that Grug is concerned that his family doesn't really need him anymore. That guy is smarter, that he's more brave and adventurous, and they're following him instead of Grug. And it's Grug's job to take care of his family. And I can relate to certain aspects of this, right? Like I want to protect my family. I want to make sure that they're healthy and they're safe and things like that. And it's hard for me when I can't keep them safe. So I do get that part, but he goes way off the deep end. And he's like, all right, fine. I'm going to be just like Guy. And he starts like coming up with, quote, inventions and ideas because that's what Guy has. Guy has ideas from his brain. That's the whole thing. And so he's like, okay, well, sloth belt, I'm going to make snake belt. And he does like all these other terrible inventions that hurt him every step of the way. And it's basically just a series of like pratfall type slapstick comedy gags of him getting hurt in ways that should probably have killed him.
But he's a caveman, so he can survive.
Right. And like they're all making fun of him, but I'm sitting there being like, man, this is like sad. This is kind of depressing. Like this guy clearly is going through something. And rather than talk to him, we're all going to just make fun of the pain that he's in.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I remember a little of this. Like you keep saying things and I'm like, I kind of remember that. Yeah. I mean, it was like turtle shell boat is my next note. I don't really remember that either. Apparently they're in a boat that's a turtle shell at some point.
Yeah, it's a brief bit, but
cave rejection. I don't know.
Rejection?
That's my next note. I don't know what that means.
His family refuses to get in a cave.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there was a cave there. That's probably what it was. Yeah, his family wanted to get into a cave, or he wanted to get into a cave. His family refused.
Right.
Yeah. So that's basically what cave rejection is, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I thought it was more
I
interesting
mean,
than it was.
at this point, the movie has shifted from, adventurous independent girl meets boy to sad middle-aged father is losing his family.
Right.
Right. And
Much less fun.
it's just like,
Maybe that's where the Family Man bits come in.
and maybe it is, it's just sad. It is just sad to watch him and maybe this is where the leaving Las Vegas stuff comes in. You kind of are watching him self-destruct
Yeah.
in a very sad, depressing way, but it's all played up for comedy. And, maybe I'm extra susceptible to that just because of my situation, but like, it was just sad. It was depressing.
At least Grug doesn't die having sex with a hooker at the end of this one.
No.
So at
There
least
was a minute where I thought they were killing him off though. I was like, wow,
okay.
that's bold.
So my next note, I do remember this because I was like, whoa, this is dark for a kids movie.
Right?
The tar pits.
Mm.
Grug and Guy they're like, I think they're like fighting or something, and they end up getting stuck in a tar pit because of their argument.
Yeah.
And Guy is literally like, no one ever escapes the tar pits. Or what Grug? One of them says,
Yeah, no, it's Guy. Basically, we learned that Guy's whole family died in a tar pit,
which is super morbid. And then
Yeah.
these two are stuck in a tar pit, and they've basically given up.
Like, that's got to be a horrible way to die.
Yeah, that's why I said tar pit death is morbid. That shit is like really depressing.
Right?
You're just starving to death until you sink in the tar, and
in reality, tar I would think would be hot. So
it would be,
also,
but probably not enough
alive.
to kill you.
I don't know.
I don't know either, but either way, it's not pleasant.
Yeah, that was dark.
And then my next note is character development.
Yeah, so Grog realizes that Guy has something to offer, but that Grug has something to offer, right? Guy has these ideas and he's very smart, but Grug has this strength and physicality that nobody else has. And so if the two of them work together and combine their strength and intelligence, they can save the family.
So as this movie went on, I can see how more and more tired I got because I can't even read some of these notes. So when we get to those, I'm just going to say what I think it says.
Oh, this is going to be great.
It's really good. Yeah. Okay. So next I have throwing his family.
Yeah. So they make it, right? So the idea is they're going to this mountain that's split down the middle. It looks kind of very like, I don't know, Eye of Sauron kind of thing. But they get up there and, they're running and the ground is breaking all around them. And they're not going to make it. And they don't make it. And they can't see the sun anymore and all this other stuff. And they figure out that it's there. So Guy is trying to get to tomorrow. So here's the thing. Guy is supposed to be like the super smart person, right? But he's also a moron. And yes, at the end of the day, spoilers, like they all live, and get to be in a happier place, but it's by accident. It's by sheer utter coincidence.
But I mean, it's implied that that's how the Croods survived this whole time anyway, is because they're terrible hunters.
Yeah.
They don't do anything right. So the only way they could have possibly survived was by sheer luck.
No, that's fair. But so the thing is that when we find out Guy's family was dying in the tar, they told him to just keep moving forward, going towards the sun, and you'll get to tomorrow, which really meant like you'll survive another day. You'll get through this loss. He took it literally. And so he's trying to physically get to a land called tomorrow. Anyway, Grug figures out that, there's this big gap and he can throw everybody across this gap, but he won't be able to make it, which is also this kind of dark, sad moment where he's chucking his family. So that's supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
Across this ravine. But every time he does it, you realize he's one step closer to like being alone and in his mind, essentially like committing suicide, essentially. Cause he thinks,
to save his family. Yeah.
Right. So it's very, again, sad, depressing part of this movie where like finally like Grug realizes who he is, what he has to offer. He comes to terms with that somebody else might be able to offer something he can't, right? And he understands how he feels about his family and takes responsibility. And then they're like, but you're going to die for it.
Right.
It's just really like,
you have to sacrifice yourself.
What is this movie, man?
So my next note is split the party.
Yeah. And that's exactly what they did.
Basically what
He
Which is
goes
a
on this little
D&D
adventure.
reference if you're
Yeah.
not familiar, but yeah.
He gets
You
to go
never
on this
split the
little
party.
adventure with the weird cat. I forget what they called it in the movie, but Chunky Cat.
Yeah. Ryan Reynolds likes playing guys. So your reference earlier,
Yeah.
I realized partway through the movie, or almost the end of the movie here.
My favorite guy is still Sam Rockwell from Galaxy Quest.
Okay. And so this is where we get to my last two notes, which I must have been like falling asleep at this point. One appears to say caveman Newly, Nooly, and I don't really know what that's supposed to say. My handwriting got real bad, guys. Here, I'll show you after this.
I don't know.
And then my very last note, I think, says classic Lagoon on Dig. I don't really know, but here I'll show you, Derek, and people at home. I don't really know what those last two mean.
I have no idea, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know what that means. Well, the movie basically ends because Grug figures out that he has an idea, and he basically builds a blimp using a skeleton, the tar, the Chunky Cat, and the death birds, the terror birds. And he starts saving animals randomly, like it's Noah's Ark or something like that, which he's shown no real like sense of caring about these things before. He knows the name of Thunk's pet for some reason, inexplicably, because they've never met. And he reunites with his family, and they all end up with various pets that they can ride and hunt with, and they have spears, and they live happily ever after until the sequel.
Great. Well, I can't wait for that. Okay, listen.
Just be happy
our listeners
that Nick did not voice in the series. Okay,
listeners, I want you to know that I really truly do love making this podcast, but every now and then we get a movie that makes me not want to do another movie, and this was one of those movies.
Oh man,
that made me not want to do this podcast anymore. Now I'm going to, because I love Derek and I love Nick Cage and I love doing this. But man, this was a slog. And I'm sorry if my notes weren't as entertaining as normal, or like if my recollection was not as good as normal. But it was just something about this movie was a complete turnoff. I was not into it from the very beginning, and just yeah, I couldn't have been less interested in this movie. I mean, it rivals Cotton Club for me. I feel like I would rather watch Cotton Club than watch this movie again, which is saying a lot, because I was very bored during that movie too. But at least there were entertaining parts in that movie, the tap dancing and some of the other stuff. But this movie, I won't remember any part of it in a week, probably.
I mean, that's fair. I don't really disagree. I mean, it's not good. It's funny once in a blue moon. It's disjointed and extreme on both ends, and just it doesn't know what it wants to be. It keeps changing what it's trying to say and what it's trying to do. And I feel like underneath of it all are some heartfelt messages that just get lost in the sheer dumbness of the humor, frankly.
Yeah. It was not good. I mean, like you said, you could tell that they were trying to push some messages through, but the other messages that actually came through, like, the girl is so boy crazy that it's distracting, the morbid tar pit death and, things like that. That's the stuff that you remember after this movie, not whatever messages it was trying to get across. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that means it's time for us to rate the movie. So we rate our movies on two scales. We have our quality scale and our caginess scale, 0 through 20, 0 is low, 20 is high. Ryan, from a quality standpoint, where would you rate the Croods?
I feel like it's got to be like a 4.
From a 4, let's see. That puts it for you below Spirit of Vengeance.
Yeah, I'd rather watch Spirit of Vengeance than watch this.
What about Dog Eat Dog? You gave Dog Eat Dog a 4.
I would probably rather watch Dog Eat Dog than this.
Okay. So
Yeah.
are you still happy with a 4 then?
I'm gonna set it at a 4. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Just
Um,
because I'd rather watch another movie than this one doesn't necessarily mean it's a worse movie than those. It just means that
that's fair.
yeah.
I didn't dislike it that much. Um, I think yeah, it's still not very good. I'm gonna give it a 7. I think it's still pretty rough, but I think that it has a few fun moments, whereas some of the movies lower down, I just like hated every minute of them.
Yeah.
um, there's at least a few times I chuckled or felt something in this. Some of these other movies we've watched, I felt nothing the entire time. So I'm going to give it a 7,
Fair enough.
which, brings us out to a 5.5, I believe, if my math is to be trusted. So then we have caginess. I guess I'll go first on caginess. I mean, there's a few things. Here's the grunting and
It's
the
tough in an
animal
animated
noises.
movie.
It is. It's like I don't want to underscore it. I don't want to overscore it. I think I'm gonna basically put it at where I put The Family Man, which is a 10.
Really? I mean, I don't know. It's tough for, like you said, because you don't. I think a lot of caginess comes from not just like the voices he makes, but like his face and the way he's moving. And you didn't. It's like you were missing 2/3 of what is involved in caginess. When we're talking about it.
I think there's a
So
lot in there. He does a lot of weird faces and silly
that's
faces.
not him. That's an animator.
Well, but it's based off of him, and I think they were trying to match his tone. And maybe they did. I mean, I don't know that they didn't do facial capture. I don't think they did, but I mean, it was 10 years ago. So,
I mean, I was thinking like a 7.
okay,
So we're way off
not
each other on
really.
this movie.
I mean, we're 3 points off on
That's
both.
the most we've ever been off
You think
on
so?
any movie. I'm sure of it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I
we're
mean,
usually within like 1.5 or 2 points of each other.
it is a weird one, being like, one of only two animated movies we've talked about. The other one being Into the Spider-Verse, which I mean,
He has like 5 minutes of screen time in that one.
and that's also arguably like one of the best animated movies ever made,
Yeah,
right?
for
So
sure.
like it's kind of hard to compare these two because it's almost like they're not even in the same sport, these two movies, right? So
Yeah.
but okay, so a 5.5 on quality and 8.5 on caginess. um is there anything else that you want to talk about with the Croods before we move on?
No.
Okay.
I'm good with being done with the Croods forever.
All
Well,
right.
until we
Well,
review the next one.
yeah, the new age. Well, okay, so next we got to figure out what movie is going to join our Wheelo Cage. And that is well, that can't be right. We already talked about Moonstruck, so I will try that again. I apologize. I thought I removed it from the list, but I must have made a mistake. So bringing out the dead. So we
Which
have
is
our
supposed to be very good. I've never seen it. Nick Cage plays a paramedic working a night shift, I believe, in that movie. I've never actually seen it, but I have consistently seen it rated in its top 5 movies.
nice.
So, and I think
Well,
he even listed it maybe up there too.
who knows when we'll get to it because this just means it's added to our Wheel O Cage. So you'll
Right.
have to go and watch the spin to find out which movie we're going to talk about on episode 25 of the show. Big
But
episode
we do have some
25.
good ones.
We
We
do
do
have
have
some
some
good
good
stuff on
ones
the wheel.
on the wheel right now. Pig, Bringing Out the Dead. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some heavy hitters there.
Adaptation is on there.
Yeah.
City
I mean,
of
we've got some great
Angels,
ones.
Lord of War.
Yes, so we've got some big movies on the wheel right now. So who knows when we'll actually get to them because, random chance. But I'm glad they're on there because I'm going to need a palate cleanser after this movie.
That's right. That's right. Well, all right. So last but not least, if you're watching, you can see an example of our new gear. We've got Nick Cage gear for the Coming of Cage podcast. Mine is inspired by Raising Arizona. Ryan's is inspired by Vampire's Kiss.
That's right.
And you can go to comingofcage.com to find the links to our merch store.
We also have Con Air and Face Off.
We do Con Air and Face Off. That's right. You can get shirts and stickers and notebooks and pins and mugs and lots of cool stuff with our cool officially logoed Nick Cage faces or Cage faces that we had commissioned for the show and all that jazz. So head on over to comingofcage.com to find links for that, links to the show. You can watch us on YouTube now and see our faces, our bearded faces, if that is of interest to you. And that's going to be it for us. Please catch the next Wheel of Cage to find out what Nicolas Cage movie we're going to talk about. And for those of you who did buy some of our merch during its first week out there, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support. Ryan,
For
anything
sure.
else?
No, I mean, keep buying because we need the money.
That's right. We do. We absolutely do. Because sometimes we have to rent these movies because they're not on streaming services. I only had 4 days left to watch the Croods. I could have had to rent that. So
That would have, I mean, you paid for worse movies than that, but
that's true. But most of those are on Freevee and Tubi. So, but all right. Well, that's it. That's it. Thanks for listening. We're the Coming of Cage podcast. I'm Derek. That's Ryan. We'll be back
see you
soon.
next time.
See ya.